right, welcome to a new season of JECU. And the season that I will be presenting, thank you so much, my friend, is going to be discussions on character improvement. And we're going to be working our way through the main character traits that Judaism seems to hold up as being needed in order to lead a good spiritual Jewish life. And first of all, before we begin getting into tonight's particular topic, which is like a crunch down version, I want to go back a little bit. And we're going to look at a Hebrew word for a few moments. There is a Hebrew word that is used to describe this topic. And by the way, when I say this topic of character traits, I'm not telling you that this is Judaism's idea of being nice. You know what? It's like your parents said to you, you've got to be nice, you've got to be friendly. This is not what I'm saying. That's true as well. What I'm going to show you this season is that when we discuss character traits, I'd like to hear from you as well as we go through this. I'm going to have a couple of exercises that we're working on. Is that, as we said, there are two sides to the tablets, the Ten Commandments. One side has all the mitzvah between us and each other. The other side has all the mitzvah between us and God. And notice that one is not above the other. They are put equal next to each other. Because we in Judaism say that if you are not acting well towards your fellow man or woman, you're missing the whole point. So much of Judaism, so much of it, and we'll be touching upon the main ones over this course, whether it be anger, whether it be jealousy, whether it be revenge, or bearing a grudge, or speaking bad about other people, this is the core to which Judaism is all about. Let me say it even more. According to the Rambam, Maimonides, every single mitzvah in the Torah, all 613, point towards one direction, your character traits. That's what it's about. And sometimes that's fairly obvious. Right? Doing a mitzvah like honoring your parents, okay, that makes sense, I hear. Helping an old lady across the street, helping people with their shopping, doing a good deed for another person, you hear. But the Rambam is saying even more than that. He says even the stuff which you don't understand. A person puts on their tefillin, keeps Shabbat, ultimately sits in a sukkah, whatever it is, ultimately the ultimate goal we're all going for is to improve who we are. Actually, that is the reason our souls were put into this world, to become better. So although you may think you're perfect, and I may think I'm perfect, and my wife does think I'm perfect, and she never lies. However, for the rest of the people, it's a constant field that we always look into and research, and ultimately every mitzvah is there somehow helping us become a little bit better. Now let's start with a little bit of Hebrew. There is a Hebrew word for character traits. Does anybody know what that word is? The Hebrew word for character traits. You should know, you did my bar mitzvah course. Nice try. Yes, on that bar mitzvah course, Melissa, we looked at the Hebrew word midah, in the singular midah, in the plural midot. That's a very interesting word. And you've got to hear this because it's really going to put the rest of the course into perspective. The word midah means character traits, right, in the plural midot, or midos. However, it also means a measure, a measurement. Like this podium over here, the stender, has midot. It's got certain measurements, right? It's got a breadth and a length and a height, right? This chair has a midah. It's the measurement of any given thing or person. Why, pray tell, would the word for character trait be the same word, Hebrew word, for a measurement? What do you think? Why would the word character trait be the same as the word for a measurement of something? Not all at once. Jason's going to say something. I knew it.
Because in Judaism, you're not measured by what you have, but what your actions.
Says my main man Jason, in Judaism, you're not measured by your possessions, although we like possessions, and we like to own them. However, ultimately, how do you measure up? Even the expression in English works up by our character traits. I've had the misfortune, although it's a mitzvah, to perform funerals, and I've been to many of them. Thank God, working with this age group, thank God it doesn't happen too often, but it happens sometimes. And I've been to how to learn how to do a funeral. I spoke to my rabbis, I learned, but I also went to other funerals. And of all the funerals I went to, I've yet to hear the rabbis stand there and say, oh, Bob Cohen. No, I go Bob Cohen, right? Okay, just checking. Bob Cohen, he was a great guy. That car, delicious. Red Mustang with the red leather seats, with the license plate with a chain around it, with the blue light underneath. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is a car. And Bob Cohen, who is no longer with us, had the nicest apartment in Florida overlooking the beach. Delicious. And the apartment in New York overlooking Central Park. Can't use it now, he's dead. But it was fantastic. Why did they not say that? I mean, this guy spent a lot of time working very, very hard to acquire all these possessions. The answer is, because it ain't what you take with you. Everyone knows when it comes down to it, you take your good deeds. Right? The actions you do. They'll always say they gave this much money away. They helped these people in that way. They took care of their kids. Right? Very rarely, although Steve Jobs did actually for some reason, but very rarely do they say your last moments before a person passes away, I wish I would have spent more hours in the office. If only I could have just had 5 more hours. That's all I need. They always say, I wish I had 5 more hours with my kids, 5 more hours helping other people, 5 more hours of doing something good for the world. That's generally speaking what people say. Steve Jobs, for some reason, spent his last year in the office, and he regretted that. He actually spoke about that, and he regretted it. Right? But we do have Apple products for the next 10 years, supposedly, so I'm happy. However, that's not really the Jewish view. So the first one is, how do you measure up? Right? Your character is your measurement, your real measurement. But I'd like to give you another answer, which fits in even more to this course. Check this out. Imagine, we'll use one of my daughters as an example, which has happened, walks in through the front door, sorry, I'm drunk, through the front door, I'm joking, with a pair of muddy boots. Right? Kids do that. So she walks in, I'm like, Haley, take those off, before you wipe them, and make sure you leave them by the door. And I walk away. I come out 20 minutes later, and I see little muddy footprints throughout the house. There's one there, there's one there, and it's not my size, not my wife's size, little bitty things. And look at my daughter, I'm like, is that you? And obviously children always say, no. Kids can deny anything. There could be no one in the house except them. There could be one jar of cookies that is now opened with cookies all over the counter, cookies on the floor, and chocolate all over their face. Like that. Right? Did you eat those? No. It's amazing. Bald-faced liars, that's what they are. All children, absolute, complete liars. They can deny anything. Did you bomb Iran? Wasn't me. Your finger's on the button. Oh, right. They can deny anything. So I turn around to my daughter, and I'm like, I am very disappointed. Abba told you, take your boots off before you come in. Now there's mud everywhere. That's it. And I've got to give her a punishment. You are not going to medical school. Done. Now, would you say that's a fair response to my 7-year-old daughter, now she's 9 actually, for walking with muddy boots? It's ridiculous. She's like, medical school? You've got to give a punishment that fits the crime. You've got to say you can't play with your friends tomorrow, or you don't get a cookie after dinner. Although, no matter what they do, I always give them the cookie anyway, because I'm like that, I break very easily. My wife doesn't. Right, you've got to find a punishment that fits the crime. Because if someone, this is very important, please listen to this. If someone does something to you, a child, an adult, a friend, an employer, an employee, your response has to be measured according to what they did to you. If someone cuts you up in traffic, we're going to see that the appropriate response may be, at that time, to stay away from them, not to chase them down I-95 for 12 miles and then blow their brains out. That is not proportionate. In other words, the response we give, i.e., the response is our character, has to measure up. You've got to measure up your response. If you hear someone say something about you, you can't approach them and just destroy and crush them. And as we're going to see this evening, this is just one topic, because maybe they didn't mean to, or maybe there's another reason why they acted like that. And that is how we define people. Character traits are all about how you measure your response, because ultimately, all we are, as people, are reactions, situations we find ourselves in. And that's going to be the theme of this course. Whether that be jealousy, because those situations we don't choose sometimes, whether it be revenge, because that's a situation we don't choose, whether it's anger, because usually we don't want to get angry, but things have happened, so people have pushed our buttons. And this is going to stem from tonight's first topic, which is judging favorably, okay? And we're going to begin in the book of Leviticus, okay? And the book of Vayikra, it says, chapter 19, verse 15. And by the way, just for interest, you'll notice that most of the verses and sources we will be looking at over the next weeks that we are studying together on this course come from this particular chapter of the Torah. And this chapter of the Torah is called Kedoshim, which means holy. Now, everyone wants to be holy, I assume, right? I mean, that means we're not bagels, right? That means when we say we want to be holy, that means we want to be good people. We want to improve ourselves. We want to work on our characters, because we said, Rabbi Lawrence told me, the Rambam says, ultimately, all we are souls, and our souls to improve have to work on the character trait. That's what we are. You can't just explode every way. Now, 1 second. By the way, whenever I give classes on character traits, the next day I always lose my temper. Okay, so my advice to you is stay away from me tomorrow, because you're going to get it. But right now, I'm in rabbi-teacher mode. So we can look at these sources, and we want to be holy. So let's look at the chapter that talks about holiness, and let's see what it has to say. And it says in the Torah, you shall not commit a distortion of justice as a judge in court. You shall not favor the poor, nor honor the great. With righteousness should you judge your fellow. And there is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, and the Rambam has a commentary on it. And the Mishnah is very famous. Yeshua ben Prachia Omer, Aseh lecha rav, make a rabbi for yourself. By the way, the same words can also read, make yourself into a rabbi. It means everyone should be knowledgeable of Judaism. Okay. Acquire a friend, kana lecha l'chaver. Acquire, actually the word kana means almost to buy. It's worth having friends, even if you have to buy them. But that's not for tonight either way. And judge every person favorably. Okay? Judge every person favorably. Okay, so 1 second. This sounds very, very nice. It sounds like something you find inside a fortune cookie. He who judges favorably will win the lottery, will not get gas from this Chinese food. I don't know, there's something, it sounds too pithy. But in Judaism, we take these ideas very seriously, and the commentators, and there's lots and lots of them, go into this and try to figure out this idea of judging each other well. First of all, figure out who. I mean, let's say you're walking down the street, and you hear a loud commotion, and then you hear gunshots. Bam, bam, bam! And you see a guy coming out of a bank, running with a gun in his hand. He's also got a big bag, which he's carrying over his back, which has the word swag written on it. He's also wearing a t-shirt that is black and white striped, and he has a mask over his eyes. Now, according to what we just read, don't honor the great, and with righteousness judge your fellow. Judge each other favorably, that's the Torah way of saying that. Does that mean that I'm meant to look at that person and say, I'll tell you what happened. Actually, he was in the bank when the robbery was happening, but he decided to tackle the guy who was really robbing the bank. And in the kerfuffle, this mask went onto his face, and he managed to get hold of the gun, and he's running away from the scene of the crime, and he wants to get the money away from any other bad people, so he took the money with him. I have now judged my fellow favorably. Is that good? No, that's insanity. You call 911 and you don't go anywhere near the guy because he's going to blow your brains out. Okay? So what does it mean to judge each other favorably? Okay, now that was an extreme example. We're going to look at some more real-life examples. But let's try to figure out who we're actually talking about, because this isn't talking about anyone out there. Judge everyone favorably, says the Rambam, Maimonides. This refers to someone who you do not know, and therefore cannot tell. I mean, when he says do not know, we'll see what he means by that. Maybe you know him a little bit, and therefore cannot tell if he is a tzaddik, a righteous person, or a rasha, a habitual wrongdoer. In such a case, if you see him doing something or saying something that could be interpreted in two ways, one good and one bad, you should give him the benefit of the doubt and assume the action was good. This approach is praiseworthy. That's the Rambam. So he's like, 1 second. What are you saying? In other words, when I see someone who's always bad talking to other people, and I hear them doing it again, I'm meant to say, oh, they're having a bad day. Or I'm meant to say, I see someone who is a real righteous person, and I see them doing something a little bit bad, we'll talk about them. We're talking about someone who I'm not so sure, I'm not 100% what they're about, but they do something. Maybe they're a friend of mine. I don't know them so well. They do something, and I could go both ways. Without too much of a stretch, I should try to lean towards a favorable understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it. Now, we'll see how you're going to get there. But that's what I'm going to try to do, okay? So the Rambam basically saying there's three types of people. You have someone called a tzaddik, someone who's known to always act correctly in a certain area of Torah law and interpersonal relationships. You know, some people are just good, right? If they do something wrong, right, it's obvious. You know what? I must have made a mistake, right? If my rabbi came out of the bank with people chasing him, I'm going to have to say that, I don't know, he's training for the marathon and he just happened to be at the bank. I'm going to find something for him because he's not. But if I see someone who's a known criminal jumping out of the bank, I'm like, I'm not judging him favorably. The guy's a criminal. Call the cops. But if I get something more subtle, right? So that's a rush. Someone who's always actually but someone I don't know, I'm not so sure about their actions. Now it gets tricky. Now I'm going to have to work at it, how I judge that person. Okay, let's look at a few more sources, and then we'll do some actual exercises, and we'll bring it out to the audience to how we could judge, and then you can tell me stories if you want of similar situations. Because we always find, literally, our day is full of these opportunities. I mean, I just had one this evening. I gave my phone to the Verizon guy, where I buy my phones from today, and I said, it's broken again. I need you to fix it. He's like, no problem, sir. No problem. So he took my phone. I said, how much time do you need? He says, listen, I'm busy today, give me an hour. I said, take 3 hours. Just fix the phone. My phone's been bad for ages, and left the phone. I was then in meetings the whole day, and I asked a favor from Ariel who works with me, and she's very, very kind, always helps me out. I told me, could you go pick up the phones? He's had it for a few hours, should be ready. So she goes, brings back, he says, here's the phone he gave me. So I took the phone, and I tried calling my wife, and this phone is not in service. Now, there I am, learning with someone, so I've got my rabbinical hat on. So I have to try to be calm. And in this case, I'm not so sure. I mean, he said he's going to fix it. I've been through this with him before a number of times. He said it's not a big deal, and it wasn't done. So at that moment, I find myself in a fairly, I mean, cell phones are, a pretty major part of my life, in a very irritated moment, right? So well, the usual reaction a person would have is to curse him out. In our minds, this beep, 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 he's such a lazy beep, beep, beep. And if there are people listening, then it becomes Lashon Hara, because now people think this guy's a criminal, not going to his store anymore, if I were to do it in a public way. The repercussions of this are really bad, so I'm not feeling good. My heart rate goes up. I then get on the phone with no phone. I start calling, and then it's busy. And you know that feeling? It just like escalates, and it's like drives you crazy. And I'm trying, and it's driving me absolutely mad. So I said, I'm going to go there myself. And I was here, and I had a class to give in 5 minutes, and you saw me, guys. I walked out, and I said, you know what? I'm teaching it. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt. And he was sitting there all calm, relaxed, and I walk in, and I'm like, Sal, my phone's not working. And he says to me, of course it's not working. I couldn't program it without your cell phone number, and I don't have your number, you idiot. So that's it. He goes, that's it. He goes, it's working. That's it. So I had really like an hour to like build up inside. 1 hour of my life was now wasted, but really the obligation for me in this case is I don't know the guy. He's done stuff before. He's done good stuff, bad stuff. It's like in between. But now my life, so life is full of this stuff all the time. Your whole day is made up of this. Your work friends, people you work with, they're doing stuff, they're saying things. Another quick story since in my head. I bought my wife a gift. It's a true story. From a certain religious man who I know. He works in, I know it's hard to believe, but there's actually Jews who work in diamonds and jewelry. I know it's hard to believe. There is a small amount of people from our faith who work in gold and diamonds. Okay, just take it as a given. So I decided to go to one said Jewish man to purchase an item for my lovely wife friend. And my first wife, who I'm still married to. So I go there, and I go and pick this up. And I said, this is real gold. It was real gold. I it's a very good price. He goes, for you, it's a good price. I'm like, oh, I heard that one before. He's like, for you, a good price. She was real gold because my wife, she liked it. She goes, absolutely. It's a lot of it. So I purchased this item, and I go home. And my wife wears it. Sometimes she wears it, sometimes she doesn't wear it. And then once, she puts it up on the shelf, okay? So I come there a few days later, and I hear suddenly my voice, my name being called. And there's different ways my wife calls me. Sometimes it's, Lawrence. Sometimes it's, Lawrence. Sometimes it's, Lawrence! The last one is the scary one, and that's when you have to run. The other ones you can mosey around, you can keep reading the paper, keep learning or something, but the last one you've got to move quick, or the repercussions are not so nice. So I go upstairs, and I see my wife looking into her hands. I'm like, everything okay, my dear, my sweet, my precious? And she said, what's your problem? And she says, look at this. I look at this gold bracelet, and I see it's all green. It's all green. I'm like, oh my goodness. What's the first thing you think? It's fake. This guy works in the business. He knows real gold, fake gold, right? And he went there, and he took all that money from me. Good deal. And there's nothing he can say to me. He saw it. He knows it. It was innocent. He gave it to me. I put it in my hand. There's nothing he can tell me to make this okay. Now, think of the injury. Imagine he's away somewhere. I can't get to him. I'm going to speak to people about him and say, oh, do you work with Moishi, that guy? I'm like, Moishi, he's a crook. He's a criminal. Right, I bought his gold bracelet, and a few days, and it came out green. And you know what I'm saying? And I could have done a lot of damage. Happened to me, I didn't. But I went there the next day, and I said, I'm going to control myself. Because I know where he lives. I'm going to break his kneecaps. So I went over. I didn't really do that. So I went over, and I'm waiting in line, and all these people are about, and I'm thinking to myself, I want to tell these people this guy's like a dodgy guy. So I go forward, and what can he tell me? There's nothing he can say to clear his name right now. So I walk up to a very quiet guy. Right, sits in a store, simple Jew, right, works with people, and I give him the bracelet. I don't say a word. I open his hand, and I put the bracelet into his hand. It looks like this. He's watching it for like 30 seconds. Feels like a lifetime. I'm thinking, okay, let's go what you got. Give me what you got. He says, where did she leave it? I went, what? Where did she leave it? She obviously wasn't wearing it, he says. He says, what do you mean, where'd she leave it? She left it on a shelf. What's on that shelf? I'm like, I don't know. It's a shelf. I don't know what's on every shelf in my house. So I called my wife. I'm like, is there a shelf where you left this item? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, Moishi wants to know what's on the shelf. She goes, I'll tell you. Walks over. She goes, happens to be where we keep the bleach and other chemicals. And I said, would you check up there, please? And a lot of it had leaked out and had come to contact with this particular bracelet and had eroded away somehow a lot of the gold on it. I'm like, I would like to apologize to you for anything I thought about you over the past 48 hours. I worked it out. I can't remember what happened years ago. Cleaned it, replaced it with something. He hooked me up. But a lot of damage could have happened. First of all, damage happens to me. Right? Now, he's got a good name in the business. According to Torah, this is Torah law. I'm not making this up. The same Torah that says keep Shabbat and give tzedakah and keep Pesach fast, Yom Kippur and give charity, all that, the same Torah says you've got to work on this. This is a mitzvah to try. This is tough. By the way, and let me be very clear when I say this. This is what it's all about. Keeping Yom Kippur is easy compared to this. You can give me 50 Yom Kippurs a year, heaven forbid, and I tell you something, that would be easy compared to one occasion of doing this. One amount of work in your character, of judging someone favorably in that situation, that's tough. Okay, let's look at the Talmud. With righteousness you must judge your fellow. This means that you should judge your fellow favorably. Rashi says, this does not refer to judging litigants in court. Rather refers to someone who observes another person doing an action that could be interpreted as either wrongdoing or as a neutral act. You should not suspect him of a wrongdoing, rather make an assumption they are innocent. Now again, this is not crazy people on the street who go around. We're talking about the Sefer Chinuch. Sefer Chinuch, we said, was a book. We don't know who wrote it, but we know why he wrote it. He had a young son who used to ask him questions and say, why do we eat matzah on Pesach, Dad? Why do we fast Yom Kippur? What do you have to do? Why do you have to do Yawar Yamka? And that's not enough. And he wrote him a book for his bar mitzvah, going through all, this beautiful book, by the way, going through all the chapters, all the mitzvahs of the entire Torah, and giving the reason behind each one. A little short snippet, a reason. So this book I love. One of my rabbis introduced it to me. In every yeshiva, they study this book just to see what's the reason why we do it. Why are we Jewish? So he always gives what he calls the Shorsh HaMitzvah, the reason behind it. Okay? The root cause of the mitzvah. Why we do it? Sometimes it comes up very novel. So mitzvah 235 is this thing. We should give benefit of the doubt in the courtrooms of our minds, just as we judge fairly in the courts of law. Right? In courts of law, it's a given. The judge has to try very much not to be persuaded too much by the people, but by the evidence before them, and try to be impartial as possible. That is expected of us. Says the Sefer Chanech, this is mitzvah 235 out of 613. There is a mitzvah to judge with righteousness, which means treat the litigants fairly and equally. Another aspect of this mitzvah is that it is appropriate to judge another's actions positively, always interpreting other people's actions and words in a favorable way. And there's a very famous story from Jewish history, and involved in this story is someone called Rabbi Akiva. Now, we've mentioned him before. Anyone Rabbi Akiva? Ever heard the name Rabbi Akiva? Sound familiar? I wanted to tell you a little bit about this individual, because he's like one of my heroes. I never met him, but he's one of my heroes. Rabbi Akiva didn't know a single word of Judaism, a single letter of the Hebrew alphabet, till he was 40 years old. At 40 years old, Torah tells us, and by the way, not he didn't know anything, he hated it with a passion. He had a discussion many years later with one of his students, and they said, "We heard you didn't like Jews and rabbis before you, got involved." He's like, "I hated them so much, I wanted to bite them like a donkey." That's what he said. And his students are in real Talmudic fashion. Only a Jew would ask this: "Why like a donkey? Why not like a dog?" That's classic Jewish thinking, right? So, if you said donkey, you said donkey for a reason. You don't usually bite like a dog. Right? You bit me like a dog. So he said, "I'll tell you why, because when a dog bites, it only gives a flesh wound. When a donkey bites, it goes through the flesh and even breaks the bone. That's how much I hated my fellow Jew." Age of 40, however, he had a certain epiphany. He was walking down the street, or maybe through a forest, and he saw a rock where drips of water was dripping down upon this rock, and over a long period of time, it caused an indentation. And for some reason, at that moment, this one spectacle, which happens sometimes, we see a certain thing after many years, and we're like, wow, and taken something from that. And this moment changed him, and he said, "You know what? This water, which is, like spirituality, Torah is always compared to water, can dent that stone after a long time. Maybe I, with my head of stone, can have an indentation from some Jewish thought." So at the age of 40, they say, he went to a local school where little children were learning, and he sat down next to these kids, and he started to learn Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, and he learned, and he learned, and he learned for a long time, and he would work and learn, work and learn. For 40 years he learned, and then for 40 years he taught Judaism. He's considered to be the leading scholar of Jewish history. The leading scholar of Jewish history is Rabbi Akiva. I mean, up there, almost with Moses. I mean, that's how the Jewish people regard this one individual. So I always say, I like stuff from him, because he started late, right? And I feel like I did too. Although I went to Yeshiva my entire life, I didn't start till I was late either. But there's wonderful incidents about him. So Rabbi Akiva worked, he was a very poor person. He wasn't rich at all. Rabbi Akiva, by the way, his wife came from a very wealthy family, and this is an interesting story, by the way, and her name was Rachel, and her father was extremely wealthy. He's like known as Mr. Wealthy, right? When he found out she wanted to marry this jalub, as he was, when he was younger, he said, "You can marry him, but you're not getting a red cent from me." And she cut him off. And he cut his daughter off. By the way, what's the Jewish law in that situation? You have a contradiction here. You have to honor your mother and father, right? But you have to get married. So let's say you want to marry someone, according that it fits in with the Jewish law, besides this. Let's say you want to marry someone your parents disapprove of. Do you have to honor your mother and father in that situation? Or can you do your own thing? You're entitled to make your own mistakes. However, she felt she wasn't. She felt she was investing in a great person, and she goaded him for many, many years. And she became one of the holiest Jewish women of Jewish history, his wife. Okay? Rabbi Akiva worked for Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus for 3 years. On the eve of Yom Kippur, Rabbi Akiva was preparing to leave and bring his wages home to his wife and children. Rabbi Akiva's people used to leave their families for years on end to work in the old days. You know that? They would go on these, like the Silk Road, this kind of stuff you have in maybe more modern history. People would leave their families for a long time, yeah? I think my commute to Manhattan's bad. Rabbi Akiva asked Rabbi Eliezer for payment for his wages. Rabbi Eliezer replied he had no money to give him. Rabbi Akiva saw that he did in fact have money. Okay. Later, Eliezer paid the full wage of Rabbi Akiva. By the way, Rabbi Eliezer asked Rabbi Akiva, "Did you suspect me when I refused to pay you in cash, even though you saw that I had money?" Rabbi Akiva replied, "I assumed you had found a bargain, real estate investment, for which you had set aside the money. Did you suspect me when I refused to pay you in pillows and blankets and land, when you saw that I had them?" Was the next question. Rabbi Akiva said, "I I assume you had pledged them your assets to the temple. People used to have assets and they would pledge them to the temple, and at that point they weren't allowed to use them. It's called hekdesh. Okay? That is exactly what happened, explained Rabbi Eliezer. My son Hyrcanus was not studying Torah and set him straight. I consecrated my property to the temple, gifting him my inheritance that would have been his. I led him into the sages. They annulled my commitments, so now they've returned, and I'm able to pay you for these goods, was the answer. Okay? So before we carry on back into the Jewish sources, which I'm going to finish off with, I want to give you a few scenarios. All right, let's do a few scenarios over here. Scenario A. Don't look at the responses yet. Scenario A. You're at the local gym getting dressed. You overhear a child say to his father, "Daddy, these pants are mine." The father responds, "It doesn't matter. Just put them on and let's go." What should you think about the incident? There you are, and you hear that, which you hear all the time, right? "Daddy, these pants are mine." What should you think? That was my American accent, by the way. What should you think about such a scenario? What are some possible favorable ways you could see this father or maybe the kid? First of all, is there an obligation to judge them favorably? The answer is yeah. There is. All right, there is. You don't know who they are. They're not habitual good or bad. Maybe you know them a little bit. Yeah, it could be. So some possible, what could they have meant by that? What could they have been saying? Yeah? It belongs to my sibling. These are mine. Is it Barry's? They're too long on me. I just put them on. Could have said that. So if the father is someone you do not know, it's praiseworthy to judge the father positively. One could make a plausible explanation. For example, the child meant that the parents were his siblings and not his own. Very, very good. Or scenario B, you're in a classroom waiting for a class to start. Okay? Two students are talking. One whispers something to the other, and then they both look at you and continue talking. Oh, that's the worst. Are they talking about you? Is it good? Is it bad? What do you men think of that situation? What do we normally think? Well, all of us in our chronic low self-esteem, we think they're talking about me and they're laughing at me. All right? That's what you think. And then you end up hating them, or mad, or taking revenge, or doing other things we'll discuss in the coming weeks. But you're not allowed to do that. You're actually not allowed to do that. The same Torah that says don't eat pig, right? Don't eat Kippur, says you've got to try in your mind to, we'll see why in a few moments, try in your mind to find some plausible. What are you meant to think? Actually, this planning my surprise birthday party, and I just walked in, and although my birthday is 6 months away, some people like to give good preparation for that. So, they're talking about me, and they don't want to talk about me when I'm in front of them. Possible? Possible. Likely? But possible. A possible response, if they are known to you, is praiseworthy to judge them positively. For example, they were speaking positively about you, or they were not actually looking at you, or even talking about you. If they're righteous people, right, and the people you know who aren't generally speaking bad, gossiping about other people, then you will be required to judge them positively. Okay? If you know they're always talking bad about other people, you can assume it, and my advice would be stay away. You have a good friend who lives in a different town, whom you speak to on the telephone every Friday while driving home. One Friday you call, and there's no reply, so you try again on Sunday. After leaving 3 messages during the week, he has not returned your call. Is he giving you the cold shoulder, or is his cell phone broken? I'll tell you a quick story on this, by the way. And by the way, your life, now I've told you this, you become aware of it. That's why the learning this stuff is important, because you become aware of it. I had a situation where a guy came over to me once, and I went after some guy once in shul, and I asked him something, and he just pretty much ignored me. I'm like, we'll call him, I don't know, Mike. I said, Mike, what's going on? He ignores me. I don't know what's happening over there. Everything okay? He says, you didn't come, did you? I went, come where? My son's wedding. I invited you to my son's wedding. I'm like, I didn't get an invitation, I promise you. I really didn't get an invitation. He goes, I didn't send you an invitation. I called you personally. You called me, and I left a message on your phone. Happens to be, it wasn't my phone, it was actually my answer phone. Happens to be remember those old things? Happens to be that week, something had happened the week before, something had my answer phone, and all my messages got turned off and wiped out. I pressed the wrong button or something, and they were all gone. So what do you think in your mind? Anything important, I'll call again. And this guy, this jalab, couldn't give me the benefit of the doubt, or maybe I just didn't get the message. I was a single guy by that point. He couldn't even do that for me. I was like, David, got wiped out. What do you want from me? And there was this hostility between us. I didn't even do anything. But it's just not fair. You've got to give people a chance, you see. This is what's expected of it, and it's tough. So if this person's a good guy, and you, which I am, right, tzaddik, okay, I don't embarrass myself, but if he calls all the time and he doesn't, you can assume something. You've got to try to assume something good, okay? And there is a famous quote from Pirkei Avot, where we learn a lot of actions and behaviors from. And by the way, tomorrow you'll be doing this a lot, by the way. You'll be like, going through different scenarios that happen to you. It's a good thing. V'al tadin et chavracha ad shetegia linkomo. Do not judge your fellow until you've reached his place. Okay, which is very similar, I think, to some like Indian quote here, you know, American Indian quote, until you walk in someone's moccasins or something like that. So it comes from Judaism. Yeah? This is the idea. You're not allowed to. Now, what does that mean to be in his place? One second. Let's say I've reached his place. And let's just break this one comment down. Shetagia limkoma. Makom is a place. It says, don't judge, reach his place. And if I were to reach his place, can I judge him or her? Is that fair? I've reached the place, whatever that place is. I've got to a place where I know them well enough and I can judge them. And you know the amazing thing the commentators say? You never reach someone's place. It doesn't mean where they physically, geographically live. Oh, if I live on their street, I can judge them. It's not where they pray. If I'm in the same synagogue, I can judge them. It's not what they do. I'm a lawyer as well. I can judge them. That's not what it means. You can't do it just because you're in the same trade. However, by the way, what you can say is that every person has their own personal place, because no two people are alike. We all have baggage from our parents, right? Some people, it's small baggage, and some people, it's those big Louis Vuitton cases, right? We all have educational things that have happened to us. We've all had interactions. We've all had crazy mornings. Truth be told, you're never in a person's place. You're never in a person's shoes, as we say, like the modern vernacular, because everyone's bringing stuff with them. So even if you think you can judge them, ultimately, you're never quite there. Which takes us to our final page, okay? This is from Yisod V'Shorosh HaAvoda. It says, the positive commandment to judge your fellow with righteousness, which is to judge him positively regarding his actions, general conduct, is closely connected to another mitzvah, which we'll be describing later on. What's this part of? So it's part of a bigger picture, and that is you have to love each other like you love yourself. What's the connection? What is the connection? What's the connection between loving each other like you love yourself? Let me ask you something. When you're late for a meeting, what's the first thing you do? Scold yourself? If you're crabby and nasty to your friends, what's the first thing you say? Oh, I had a bad morning. We're all very, very good at excusing ourselves for doing nasty stuff. For not saying, well, what do they expect? You know, I was very busy that morning. When it comes to judging someone else who did the exact same thing, all of a sudden, you know what? That's just not right. Right? We'll say it's just not fair they did that. But our own stuff, well, we're very, very quick, right, to find an excuse. So that's why they say, love your neighbor like you love yourself. Just like you love yourself and you make yourself innocent for every negative thing you were ever accused of, you've got to try to use yourself as the balance, as the mirror. Right? In other words, you know what? I do that all the time. I mean, if you don't do it, you could do it. So in other words, just like you don't want it done to you, don't do it to them. You've got to love them with the same way that you love, and the opportunities of this. It is clear that if one judges one's fellows negatively even once, this is another aspect, they find it difficult to fulfill this mitzvah, because how can you love another person when you think they've like really done you a bad deed? Okay? So what are you doing over here, by the way? Are you insane? I'm being very serious. I mean, I've taught a whole class right now on Jewish thought, which is saying judge other people favorably. But you asked me to find some crazy scenario, right? Like some bleach fell on the bracelet. I mean, is that what I'm going to do? Am I going to be crazy? Basically, you're asking me, Rabbi, to be completely nuts, to find some far off, like 1% chance in that situation. Is that what? Is that the Torah expects of me, to be completely crazy? Well, we're Jewish, so we can't be crazy. But is this what I'm going to do all the time? So not so much. Let's get just a little bit deeper. So Rav Shlomo Volb, one of the great thinkers of the last generation, actually his daughter-in-law set my wife up. He says, when you judge someone favorably, you actually really hope that person is guiltless. You're not crazy. You're just hoping, right? You're really hoping that they're guiltless. That's what you're going for, okay? You seek ways of understanding the other person's actions as good. You're going to try to go through scenarios in your head. What could it be? I mean, this whole road rage thing, there's stories about this all the time, people pulling over, getting fights and crashing, all this kind of stuff, and we'll speak more about that, because on the road, You know that some people, like, as soon as they get into the car, they're like calm, lovely people. Next thing you know, they walk into a car, they can like put a cabbage on their heads, and they turn into a complete insane person, ram people off the street, you hear? So when that happens, and it doesn't always work for me, because usually when someone cuts in front of you, the first thing you want to do is show them a digit from your hand, you understand? But that's not really, first of all, it's not good for you, and they can't even see it, right? And if they can, what's the point? They're going to try to ram you off the road and get into a fight. You're going to try to say, well, maybe they got some really bad news today, which is possible, because we always get bad news. Maybe they just got diagnosed with cancer. Now, imagine if I knew that about the person. Is it possible? Possible. Likely? That the person diagnosed with cancer is cutting in front of me right now. But if I were to give that, I want that to be the reason. Because if that's the reason, I'm not going to get angry. I'm actually going to feel sorry for them. You know what? You go first. You just got diagnosed. You hear? So you've got to try to find these scenarios because you really want them to be true. I mean, not this person's ill, but you want to find, you don't curse the person, but you want to find some scenario where this is at least possible. To this extent, you have to regard another person with a positive attitude. And this, we're going to see, is going to filter into the rest of your life. And what I'm telling you this evening isn't just being nice to everyone else, you're actually being nice to yourself. You actually become a nicer person because of this. Okay? So I put down 4 scenarios. How would you judge? The girl behind the counter gets impatient with you and answers your questions reluctantly and tersely. Like every time you go into a Dwayne Reed, you know? A gentleman comes from behind you on the sidewalk, brushes past you, you're startled, not bothering to apologize. Stuff happens to us all the time. Your neighbor parks his car right near the entrance to your driveway after you've asked him at least 3 times. Your roommate comes to the room at 3 a.m. talking loudly on the cell phone. Now, I've left some open questions, but really how we act in those test moments, and we're going to fail. I mean, I fail regularly, you know what I'm saying? There's room for improvement. There's room for improvement. But ultimately, how we act in those scenarios are really going to become who we are. Because we're never going to see these people again. But they end up living in our heads rent-free. And I've had that. I've had some people have done stuff, I don't know who they are, and I've literally walked around with these people in my heads forever. Okay? And that's why it says the Rambam, a Talmud Chacham, a person whose actions and personality are shaped by Torah values and wisdom, which we should all ascribe to be, should not shout like an animal when he speaks with people. Now should he raise his voice, speak calmly with everyone. Make sure, take the initiative to greet everyone first, that it's pleasant to be around, judge people positively, and speak favorably about others, never negatively. We'll do a whole talk just on Lashon Hara and the different forms and rules of speaking negatively. Sometimes you have to speak negatively. And we'll jump to the final line, and this is the kicker. This is the punchline. This is one comment from the Talmud, and it goes like this. Judge other people favorably. Why? Because if you do, God judges us favorably. So if everything I told you doesn't work, at least hear this piece out. All the time we're being judged by God. I don't know how it works, I don't know when it's happening, but it happens. And everything that happens to us is really the result of the judgment. I mean, we get judged on Yom Kippur, but there's little judgments all the time, right? Why is the person going over there? I give this opportunity. I'm always praying to God. I'm hoping opportunities come my way. So there's a rule in Judaism called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Measure for measure is actually a spiritual concept. Just check this out. We'll finish with this. And it goes like this. What you do to other people and how you judge them, and we'll see the other things as well, but because we're discussing judging tonight, how you judge them is how God judges you. If you have patience with other people, for some reason, and we'll see maybe the reason why, when you're judged in heaven, which happens to people a lot, you get judged with patience as well. If you're nice to people, God's going to be nice to you. Now, why would this be? Why would this boomerang effect be happening? In other words, measure for measure doesn't mean if I'm nice to you, you're nice to me. We're saying what you give out to other people, God's going to give to you. Because that's who you are. You've made yourself into a person that likes to judge other people favorably, for example, or wants to control their temper. So God is going to want to control his temper on you, because that's only fair. You're a person who controls your temper, so God's going to say, fine, that's the way you are. I want to get angry over something you did, but you know what? I'm going to hold back, because I see you're working in this area, so you don't deserve the same thing. I'm going to work on it too. And that's really the concept of midah keneged midah. Whatever goes around, as we say, comes around. I mean, they call it karma, but that's not a Jewish concept. I don't like that term, right? It's actually God judging us. So what you give out comes back to you. And by the way, when God gives it back to you, it can come 1,000 times worse, heaven forbid, but it can also come 1,000 times better as well. And we all want blessings in life. So if you treat God's creations, i.e. other people in a good way, it actually comes down to us the same way. Don't think for a second you've got to become a schmatter, make yourself into a carpet everyone can walk on. We're going to talk about the way you're meant to deal with people and speak to them when they have actually harmed you. But in this scenario, this is the ideal. We're going to stop over there.